usually things that are important to people's lives become more important, the amount of attention put to them increases as well. I think payroll is one of the few examples where actually it's really important for people's lives. They can fund their lifestyle, that they can pay their bills, that they can support themselves, and yet gets very little attention for something that is such a critical part of our country's infrastructure effectively. And I think it's an area where the complexity is really misunderstood and underestimated by people outside the industry.
Hello and welcome back to the Payroll Podcast. I'm your host. My name is Nick Day. I'm CEO at JGA Recruitment Group. We are specialist payroll recruiters with offices in the UK, Europe, and now the US as well. Thank you also for listening to the show. Please do remember to press subscribe. And if you haven't before, please do leave us a review. It really helps us raise the profile of payroll by getting more listeners to the show. Now, today we're diving into an exciting new era of payroll, one that's smarter, faster, and more focused on reducing stress, something I know that you all suffer with in the world of payroll, but not just for payroll professionals, also we hope for the employees you pay as well. And to do that, I'm thrilled to welcome today George Dunnett, who's Chief Product Officer at Zellis, and Nick Clarke, who's Director of Product Management. Together today, they're going to share some of their insights, particularly related to a new product known as Zellis HCM AIR. It's a major product upgrade that really does leverage real-time payroll calculations and artificial intelligence to make payroll more efficient and stress-free. We're going to be discussing how these innovations are transforming payroll, improving financial well-being, and of course, reshaping that payroll talent experience. Of course, if you're interested in finding out how payroll is really evolving with cutting-edge tech, then do stay tuned. The Payroll Podcast is where it's at, and we always bring you the best guests that are really influencing the space of tomorrow. So without further ado, welcome George Dunnett and Nick Clarke to the Payroll Podcast. How are you both feeling today?
Great. Thank you very much for having us on the show. It's very exciting to be here. And as you said at the beginning, feeling very energized in a minute by all the huge work we're doing in the product right now. And, keen to talk about that and the industry generally today.
Fantastic. Well, definitely keen to hear more about that myself as well. I want to see where the industry is moving towards. Before we jump into that, I'm going to ask my first question, something I ask all of my guests, which is this. I'm going to start with you, Nick, if I may. What does the word payroll mean to you?
Well, Nick, it's an ever-changing world. Payroll used to mean those two things about paying people accurately and on time. I think it's so much more. Payroll, people are so passionate about what they deliver, and it's so complex now that it's really elevated in the industry. So ultimately, the passion is still there, but it needs it's all about financial wellness and so much more these days.
I could be more. George?
I agree, Nick. Building on that, I think it's usually as things that are important to people's lives become more important, the amount of attention put to them increases as well. I think payroll is one of the few examples where actually it's really important for people's lives, that they can fund their lifestyle, that they can pay their bills, that they can support themselves, and yet gets very little attention for something that is such a critical part of our country's infrastructure effectively. And I think it's an area where the complexity is really misunderstood and underestimated by people outside the industry. So I think what you're doing with your podcast is fantastic to shine more of a light on it.
Yeah, I think more of a light is being shone on the industry now as well. We've seen a lot of changes both in innovation, we're going to talk about today, but also a lot of changes post-pandemic as well, which really thrust the world of payroll into the limelight. But you touched upon a couple of things there, George, which is payroll legislation and complexity is getting harder and harder every year. We're seeing with an era of globalization, which just adds further layer of complexity to it. So what does that really mean for payroll teams today? How can real-time payroll start to address some of these challenges?
Well, I'm going to let Nick answer that because Nick has really led our project to develop this and has done some fantastic work.
I know that I always look back and I've answered this kind of question a few times and talked with a lot of colleagues in the industry around. I started like 25, 26 years ago in operational payroll, and I can't quite remember exactly, but I think we only had to really worry about tax, national insurance, pensions and court orders from memory. I think student loans came a bit later. But now there's just so much more. There's so much more legislation to understand, to be compliant, and to look at how they all fit together and how they all mesh together. Sometimes they just don't. So there's more to keep up to speed on, more to be knowledgeable about, and just more risk for employers as well. So, and I think that's really helped elevate the payroll professional as well. I think they've really been elevated in the last few years in terms of the strategic importance to both an organization, but to individual employees who rely on that to fund their lifestyle, as George said.
I agree. So from a project management perspective, then, obviously you've got a new product we're going to talk about a little bit more about today, which is the HCM AIR product. But what's been the most challenging aspects of meeting those legislative demands that are really being put on payroll teams at the moment?
I think there's a big principle that we had when we started to look at this kind of whole automation piece and how we can take the burden away from payrollers for the kind of transactional tasks. As I say, there's a lot more legislation to get to grips with. So shouldn't we be focusing on spending our time understanding that and elevating particular expertise in those different areas? I always use an example of minimum wage and salary sacrifice in the UK and how they're two pieces of legislation, but really kind of butt heads together sometimes and cause significant problems. So what we really wanted to do was automate as much as we can and use intelligent features, not just around calculations, but also looking at things like anomalies or patterns, etc., so that the payroll professional can actually forget the transactional work, let the technology do all the work, and really look at the value add for their organisation. Then
I think, Nick, moving to real. Sorry, there's problem with having two Nicks, isn't it? So, Zellis, Nick. I think one of the things is you're talking about lots of new legislation coming in all the time, lots of complexity with all of that. There's so much for payroll teams to keep on top of, and we in our company do as much as we can to automate all of that to help people be compliant and save time. But there's still lots to do, and so I think the step forward we've made and some other companies have made of moving it from a batch process where you kind of wait till all the data's in before you do all your payroll calculations to doing that in real time continuously it's got many benefits. I'm sure Nick can talk to more of them, but just buying back time in the month or in the week if you've got a weekly payroll cycle is of huge benefit to people in payroll teams to be able to spend more time digging into issues, to spread the work out, just to be less stressed, but also to give them more time to ensure that accuracy that the end employee really values.
Well, something I'd like to then just build on that. You mentioned the time element there. And I think that's important to give time back for various tasks. And maybe people can just take a holiday, right? Some people can't. I spoke to someone at the conference recently. She hadn't taken a holiday for 3 years. She's a sole payroll professional and her company feels like she has to take, sort of long weekends because the payroll make it. And I imagine there's more examples like that exist. But also, I know that one of the things we've really seen a shift towards is as people have more time back and payroll professionals become hopefully more strategic, and hopefully that will continue, they're able really starting to have a bigger impact on the employee experience. And I mentioned financial wellness as being part of that in the introduction, but there's a lot of other elements we can get involved in as well. So I'd love to know, in addition to just operational efficiency, but also what are we doing at the moment to help improve the payroll employee experience as well? Because that was a term we didn't really link to payroll a few years ago, and now we're hearing it everywhere, and rightly so. It's really critical now for payroll organisations and functions to start thinking about the experience more.
Quite. I think, there's the employee experience of the payroll teams themselves to help them manage the increasing workload and spread that out and do that in a way that is using software that is engaging, gives them the information just at the touch of a button that they need in a really visual way so that they can prioritize their work accordingly and gives them confidence that what they're doing is going to be compliant. So that's really important. So I'd kind of group that in one area because we don't want to forget the payroll team's own experience. And then there are all the other employees. And like you say, I think there is, in the past, the job was just to make sure the right amount got into the bank account at the right time for people. But there is, and that which is critically important in and of itself. But beyond that, there's loads more that you can do to help people, I think. And I think more and more employees are expecting additional help around the broader financial wellness. And that can be a few things. I think it's around helping you manage your money better. So encouraging you to save and put money aside and actually enabling you to do that at the click of a button. It can be the kind of earned wage access that many employers are now offering, that we offer, where if you do have some unexpected bill, you can get hold of your money earlier if you haven't put the savings aside, for example. I think there's advice on budgeting there's a lot around financial literacy. We've had a huge focus on this recently, done tons of design work. We've got loads of input from employees, from many of our customers to help understand what their needs are and what they understand. And we've actually filmed them using the product and so on. And it's when you're in the industry, there's stuff that appears pretty obvious, that is just is standard, everyone knows it. But when you go and observe people actually using the product, you realize that it's not quite as obvious as you think. And so we are redesigning everything to be really intuitive and understandable to people, using colors and symbols as well as text. And then we talked about new technology at the beginning, and one of the things that we've added in is using generative AI to help explain people's payslips to them. And I think this is one area where others are beginning to copy us and pick up on it. But it's a fantastic tool in very simple language to explain, this is your pay, this is why it's different from the previous month, this is what this deduction is and why it's different, this is how your overtime has been made up and the number of hours you did, and do that in really simple language. And that, I think, is hugely important for people's financial well-being, because it gives them confidence in their understanding of their own finances.
Yeah.
And many times in the past, they would have gone to HR or their manager to ask that question, which takes a lot of time from HR or the manager. Or probably even worse, they just kept it to themselves and just got anxious. And so with the benefits of this new technology that we're leveraging, it's got benefits both for the efficiency of payroll teams, but also for the end individual, to help them have confidence that they're getting paid the right amount and that they understand it, and so they can plan their finances better.
I think you raised some interesting points there. I mean, certainly from the research we've done here, and what I've read as well from other guests I've had on the show, we know there's a very clear link between mental health and financial health. And I think, as you said, we can do a lot of financial wellness, but the most important thing from a payroll perspective is making sure that people are paid accurately and on time in the first place. And we know from a recruitment standpoint, I think the first time someone's paid incorrectly, there's a 25% chance they'll start looking for a new position. If they're paid twice incorrectly in the same year, it can go as high as 70%. So it's really important we get that bit right. And you mentioned earlier on about the improvements you've made in terms of operational efficiency. We've mentioned AI there. I know that AI can be utilized in ways in sort of identifying anomalies and things like that. Nick, if I come to you, what specifically have you targeted then from an operational efficiency point of view that's really helped that payroll experience, helped improve that accuracy, that compliance, that's going to actually have that knock-on impact, and improved impact, of course, on financial stress and wellness?
Well, we've certainly done a lot around, as George said, the Payslip experience, which I think it turns into smoothing work out and taking away queries, both for the end employee and the payroll professionals. So there's some great stuff there. In terms of operational efficiencies, as George mentioned earlier, having that real-time calculation, always in calc kind of methodology, just allows for that to be smoothed over. The person that you talked to at conference who hadn't had a week off for a while, or for a number of years, hadn't had a holiday for a while, that's crazy. You know, we need to take away that stress. So we really think we've taken that stress away from the payroll operative. The other thing that we've looked at is automating the transactional pieces. So any different forms that are coming in, using AI to automate those. Looking at different algorithms, again using AI, things like modern slavery signs. If there's somebody that's had a real peak in overtime that looks unusual. So really pulling those into a dashboard for the payroll user to go and investigate and resolve if it is an error, for example. And ultimately that, as you say, it's about accuracy and being on time. Also, we can make payslips available much earlier. So you can see the payslip building up as and when you create a new shift or work a new shift. And in real time, that payslip can be built up. So again, it gives almost that kind of financial assurance that I know what I'm going to be paid on payday, and if there's a problem, I can deal with it before payday. As you say, when somebody has that incorrect pay the first time, it can be really obviously demotivating for that individual, and you kind of lose them. They start to put one foot out the door.
Yeah, absolutely. And I spoke to a payroll manager recently. It surprised me because this is a top multi-million-pound organisation. And so for one of the payrolls they have to process, he has to manage 43 different Excel spreadsheets. And that kind of went, so much. It surprised me because I thought everything was a little bit more efficient, if you like, and certainly with some of these larger organizations. And it shocked me that actually there's still a lot of operational efficiency savings to be had, or improvements still to be made. And you mentioned the word AI there a couple of times and how you're utilizing that. But I'd love to know a little bit more about artificial intelligence. It's a buzzword in the payroll industry we're hearing a lot about. So what role specifically is AI really playing in enhancing payroll through the HCM AIR products in particular?
Why don't I pick that one up and you can build on it, Nick? So I think, I think your spreadsheets, by the way, is not just an issue of efficiency, but there's an issue of errors and accuracy. When you've got 43 spreadsheets, trying to keep them aligned, that sounds horrendous. We should talk to that guy. I'm sure we could help him. But in terms of AI, there's obviously generative AI is the big thing that everyone's been talking about for the last 18 months or so. The sort of ChatGPT giving you answers, helping write your kids' essays, that sort of thing. And we're using that. It's very good at generating content, generating text. And so we've used it in the intelligent payslips that we are now offering to customers, where, as I was talking about earlier, it can explain your pay in really simple language to all of your employees. They can understand how the pay is varied from previous months, how it's made up, all of the kind of questions that might have made them anxious before or stressed or taken up the time of the payroll teams to answer. And that's generative pay. And in broader HR, there are lots of uses for generative AI as well. But in payroll, this is a really good use case for it, and a really thoughtful, valuable one. Then there are other types of artificial intelligence, and machine learning is probably the main one. There, looking for patterns across data input, across many, many different data points, and helping highlight things. And so that can be used for spotting anomalies and fraud and modern slavery signs, and highlighting those to the payroll professional. So not necessarily solving them all, but it saves a lot of time and gives a lot more confidence to the payroll professional to know that there's that second pair of eyes on all the payroll data, constantly flagging things up and saying, you should go and check that out. That doesn't look quite right. And then on the data input, where there's a lot of manual work, even today still, there's a lot of that AI and the machine learning variety can do to automate just basic data entry. That's pretty straightforward, been around for a while, although not everyone uses it. But things like the forms Nick mentioned, P45s and court orders and so on, inputting that, but not just inputting it, but also validating it, checking which record it applies to, checking if there's inconsistent data against that person, that worker already, flagging that up if there's a problem, or saying something looks anomalous there, and flagging that up to be looked at. That, again, saves time and drives efficiency, but also drives accuracy and the confidence of the payroll professional.
Yeah.
So I think it's a great new technology. It's really had a light shone on it recently with the sort of step forwards in ChatGPT. But it's been something that we've been really enthusiastic about adopting in the latest release.
So you've given some really, really good examples there, how AI has been used intelligently to improve the process, certainly to improve the employee experience in the way they can look at their pay slips and understand them better, finding anomalies, as you mentioned, from a compliance perspective. Nick, if I come to you, how does that change the way then that the payroll professionals themselves are interacting with the system on a daily basis?
So on a daily basis, George mentioned at the start, we've moved away and a lot of systems have moved away from the batch processing kind of methodology that we had years ago. Payroll people now just need a dashboard of information and then react if they need to react to it. But better still, if the system is telling you things, driving errors to the dashboard, giving you comparative metrics as well. So if it's a big change in overtime spend or bonus spend, etc., it's giving the payroll of those types of things. So I always use this analogy really is payroll used to be very transactional, but there's so much more knowledge that's needed now. And I always think about, when I used to be a transactional payroller, nowadays I think I would call myself a pay business partner because I can offer more value add to organizations as well. So if people are seeing trends and patterns, they can flag those up, or the system can flag those up. So instead of being really reactive and running a process, it's all happening behind the scenes. So really low touch, but lots of data and information, and AI over the top of that, looking at all those types of anomalies and doing some of the heavy lifting as well that you can't get away from. So something like a P45, if you've got high volume in some industries of attrition, that could be quite a big task every month. If we can automate that, then they can really concentrate on more value-add tasks, like being that kind of pay business partner, thinking about financial well-being, reducing or eradicating any errors for employees to keep that better financial wellness and better employee experience.
I think you talked a lot about data and analytics there, Nick. I think another fantastic use case for AI is in helping make sense of the huge amount of data that is in people's payroll systems, both for reporting and the kind of standard reports people are used to, and helping to generate those, but also helping to generate insights and helping payroll teams you talked about becoming more strategic. Being able to draw out insights from the data is a great way to be more strategic as a payroll professional. And AI can really help do that without having to spend huge amounts of time trawling through databases. You can use a natural language query to get answers to the questions that you've got.
Yeah, I completely agree. I like the way that Nick put it, which was, he's now considered himself to be more of a payroll value business partner in that context. And I think that's where some of the shift has really happened recently, where we're now, payroll's always been considered as that really expensive cost center. It pays out wages, it's very expensive. But actually, if we change the mindset and change the view, it can also be seen as a profit center in different ways. If we're able to improve our attrition because we've got a more accurate and compliant process, if we're having a better experience for our employees so they stay committed for longer, it makes it easier to attract staff and more innovative with our solutions. Actually, all of these things add money back into the organization in slightly different ways. I think that's changed the way that people are viewing it. And I think you raise a great point there, George, on the analytical side. If payroll professionals can really start to dive into the analytics and use them to create insights and find insights that are going to help boards to make more strategic and clever decisions, then that's a really great way to raise the profile of payroll. So I want to jump into a little bit further. I'll stay with you, George, for a moment. Do you believe then that employees are now looking to their employers more for financial well-being support? Do you think that's been also a shift from employees as the technology's got better? Employees are demanding more from their payroll departments as well. And if you do agree with that, what does that mean for the future of payroll? What's coming next?
No, I absolutely agree with that, and not just from my own experience. I've seen data. I remember 4 or 5 years ago at our user summit showing some data. I think it was from Citibank to say 60% of employees expected their employer to support their financial well-being. And then looked at it again the other day. I think there was a similar stat in the FT, and it had gone up to 80% or something now. And I think that's driven partly by the technology, partly by expectations increasing, partly by the cost of living crisis we've had over the last few years, and people looking for more help. And I think it is. I think it is really validating, I think, for payroll teams, and I think it adds more to the enjoyment of the job, in my view, that you're not just running a transaction and trying to do it as accurately as possible, important as that is, but you're supporting people with something that's really critical to their everyday lives, and getting it wrong can be disastrous for them if people don't manage their money well. Helping to educate people better, giving them more options, helping them to save, helping them to manage money better. That has a huge impact on people's lives. And so I think it's a fantastic end in its own right, but has the side benefit, I think, of making the payroll job even more engaging for ourselves and users of our software.
Hello, global payroll leaders. Are you facing challenges in finding the right payroll talent for your team? If you are, I hear you. And I'm here to offer you a solution, because at JGA Payroll Recruitment, we're experts at sourcing, attracting, and engaging with top-tier global payroll talent that really drives business success. So don't let the frustration of finding great payroll professionals hold you back from raising the profile of payroll in your organization. The cost of a poor hire isn't just financial. It costs you time, or worse, it damages the reputation of your payroll operation. That's why we're 100% dedicated to ensuring your recruitment journey with us is nothing short of exceptional. Partner with us at JGA because we're an award-winning global payroll recruitment agency with a proven track record of success. We have over 100 5-star Google reviews, and we're trusted by many of the world's leading brands. And we would love to help you elevate your team with the best payroll talent available anywhere in the world. Reach out to us today at 01727 800 or 377 or visit us at jgrecruitment.com. And while you're at it, why not sign up to our weekly payroll newsletter for exclusive industry insights and job opportunities? With us, your perfect payroll opportunity or your perfect payroll hire awaits. So let me come to you, Nick. I've got a question. I appreciate, before I ask you the question, these aren't mutually exclusive. However, you obviously developed a new product, HCM AIR, fantastic. It's out. We're going to find out more about that in just a moment. But what was the motivation behind developing new products in the first place? Was that being driven by that 60 to 80% measure you just mentioned there, George, about the increased expectation from employees demanding more from their employers, or was it coming out of the fact that there was just inefficiencies that we weren't being taken advantage of in relation to the things that AI can give us now and a new solution? I'd love to know a little bit more about the motivations behind the upgrade in the first place. What was it in the market, that the gap you were trying to you hopefully have overcome and have plugged in the new software?
Our role, maybe Nick talk to AIR specifically in a minute, but when you're a successful software company, you have a really good understanding of people's needs, customer needs, and you've got a really good understanding of what technology is capable of. And you bring those two things together. And if you can develop great product matching those two things, then you're going to differentiate yourself better in the market. And for us, we spend a lot of time talking to customers, and needs change, but there are three big themes of need that we come across constantly. First of those is definitely efficiency in all their processes and accuracy in those processes. The second, I think, is engagement with their people and helping drive that, because that's a differentiator for them in a tight employment market. And then the third is data and insight to help them empower their decision making. And so we have those things in our minds all of the time when we're thinking about where to go next with the product. And then when ChatGPT 3 came out, quickly followed by 3.5 and 4, we sort of thought, let's see what this is capable of. We'd already been learning machine learning and applying some of that to our product. And the ChatGPT element really gave us this impetus to see what we could do with it. And we ring-fenced a bunch of people into a kind of skunk works and came up with lots of different prototypes of many different use cases for this technology. And then we applied them to what the customer needs were and brought that together. And we were really excited by the potential of taking a big step forwards in the product using AI and using real-time calculation engines. And so we put a lot of investment into this product over the last 18 months or so. And that was really the genesis of it. And Nick drove a lot of that and can probably fill you in on a bit more of the detail.
I think there was completely agree, but I think there's a couple of other things to build on that. I think the pandemic accelerated us really, because we've always had automation in products. There's lots of payroll products out there that have different levels of automation, and we wanted to take it to the next level. But I think the pandemic, as I say, accelerated that, because all of a sudden we need, the payroll dynamic just seemed, just changed overnight. But as ever, we pulled out the stops and payroll has delivered. But also, I think the complexity, so we're getting more and more complexity, and we're not seeing a let up of that. But the third thing as well is consumer expectation. So our customers are quite rightly expecting more, and we need to come up with the new ideas and give them more, as well as end users, end employees that are receiving their payslip. So I think there's a few things that's really driven that, and we wanted to use this next gen AI over the top of all of those payroll processes to, as we call it internally, the 3 E's, and one of them being efficiency, and that George mentioned.
We're also in an era now where the nature of payroll has changed again. Employee experience is demanding it. We've got real-time pay. We've got pound demand, urge access, whatever way you want to call it. There's really changed the dynamic as well. So employers are starting to demand more. We've seen more from a recruitment perspective. If there's two options on the table and one can deliver real-time, immediate access to pay and one still has a traditional pay cycle, that could be the differentiator between taking one job over another. And we know that some payroll departments are resistant to it. I understand the reasons why. However, if employers are demanding it, chances are it's going to come in. unfortunately, whether they like it or not, because we have to look after our employees, our most essential asset within our organisation. From your perspective, with the introduction of real-time payroll, what are some of the immediate benefits that you're seeing companies seeing, and how's that impacting the overall payroll process in terms of accuracy and reliability?
So we're already seeing, and we've been seeing a lot of efficiencies around kind of the payroll cycle, so where people can concentrate their effort. So there's some tangible benefits there. There's also an increase in accuracy. So the age-old example is that late leaver that is really hard to recover. They've walked out, payroll don't know about it. With the things like, we've also got the element of faster payments instead of backs in the UK, so we can make payments at the very last moment, which means that we can process a lever at the very last moment. Additionally, we're seeing some really good engagement scores in starters as well. I had somebody who started, I think it was over a year ago now, but she started on what would have been a traditional, close to a traditional payroll cutoff date, and she was amazed and joyed to find she'd been paid that month rather than having to wait 6 weeks till the next month. So you mentioned it earlier on, Nick, around new candidates. If something goes wrong, that's a really poor experience. But if we can wow and bring magic moments to a new employee where they get paid as soon as possible, then that's even better. And I think in the future, could we even think about choosing your own payday, having a really flexible payday? I know earned wage access, you can draw down and you can have some of that money, but does it really mean that the future cycles of monthly or weekly or 4 weekly, etc., could be a thing of the past in future? I think it really opens up some opportunities for more flexibility.
Yeah, I agree. We're looking forward to watching the space. George?
Well, there are all these efficiencies from removing the cost of late leavers and trying to recover that, having massively reducing the importance of the payroll cutoff date and being able to shift it later in the cycle, and the extra time that gives you is really efficient. But I think some of the points you were making earlier, Nick, around how all of this helps with engagement, the accuracy, the flexibility, how being an employee and feeling valued that comes with that, and the care for your financial wellness, all of that, and the insight from data, all of these things come together to make customers who use this product more competitive and more differentiated in the market. So it goes to their core business. It goes to everything you were saying about making payroll a profit center rather than a cost center. All of this new technology, actually using this, I think, has got huge advantages for the competitivity of our customers, but also British industry, Irish industry generally.
Sure. I know that some things like earned wage access or pay on demand, they've been driven by the employees demanding it. If you like, we want to have access to this. As I said, from a recruitment standpoint, you may select one employer over another, and sometimes they need, particularly those that are at the low end of the earning scale, they need access to wages to pay those core bills. But from your software solution side of things, how much is existing user feedback, so the payroll professionals that are using the software, influence the kind of the real-time functionality that you've now really built into the HCM AIR products? It's really interesting to know what the payroll users have been feeding back to you, and perhaps where their challenges are that hopefully you've overcome in the new solution.
Well, maybe I'll pick up on that, because we've been working with our initial customers that have taken the new product, and we've been able to pivot and tweak slightly. Things like earned wage access and those type of things. Yes, there's some skepticism sometimes in payroll departments, but bringing people on a journey is really important. So we've tweaked and built on the earlier versions of our product, and we've got a second version of that. Things like automatic reconciliations were really important for our customers, so we've built that on top of the initial real-time payroll calculations. So we're getting really good insight and ideas from those payroll departments that we're working on through our initial engagement.
Yeah, it's something we've spent a lot of time talking to them. I remember back in COVID when the rules for the COVID furlough scheme were changing constantly, and we were speaking to customers who were struggling to cope with all of this and all of their other changes, and we were updating the software almost weekly at that point. And that kind of relationship that we built up over those years, we've continued on since, and we feed that constantly into the product. And everyone within Zellis who's customer facing feeds into our product system with ideas that they pick up and feedback that they get. We get some of it direct from users as well in the product, and this all feeds into my team, Nick's team, and what they're doing. And has been super valuable. It's a lot of effort for people to give that feedback.
Well, I think it's really important. From my perspective, and even as a recruitment CEO, I get flooded with potential solutions that may or may not revolutionise the industry that I work in. But for me, it's really important that anyone that's pitching products to me has a background in the sector that I operate in. And I think for me, we get, because of the emergence of AI and the ability to create new products and no code and all these kind of things, we get a lot of people pitching me products who've never worked in my space. They think they're solving a problem, and I can see straight away that it's not a problem I'm dealing with, or it's not quite right. So I think it's really important that, and I credit you because you're a payroll business here that have got a long track record in working with customers. You really understand the intricacies of the industry, the complexities, the fact that there isn't always a single answer to a payroll problem. I think that's what makes it so exciting, and also why AI isn't always going to solve every problem. Sometimes the legislation is complex and 3 different experts will interpret it ever so slightly differently. And we've certainly discovered that during COVID as well. So I wanted to echo that because I think for those listening, I think there's we need to ensure that we're not just always looking at the shiny things that we see out there, because you're going to get flooded with new solutions. And I'd always look at the track record. Are these suppliers, have they worked in payroll before? Do they really understand the intricacies and the complexities of the payroll solutions that they're pitching? It sounds like you guys really do. We've had a really good exploration as to how you've, the motivations behind the HCM AIR product. But tell me a little bit about it. If someone's listening to this now, I want to go, actually, okay, I like everything that I've heard Nick and George say so far. What is the solution? How's it different to other things that are on the market? We know it's backed by user feedback, a really good track record in the payroll services industry. Tell us a little bit more, George.
Yeah, I'll kick off. So Zellis HCM AIR, it's the next generation of our Zellis HCM product. Payroll is at its core. Every customer takes payroll. It is hosted in the public cloud in Microsoft Azure, which makes it very resilient and very performant. It comes with a data integration layer that makes integrating with your other HR products very straightforward and very real time. And then it adds in our best of breed payroll solution, where we think that we automate more compliance than any other product in the UK and Irish markets in terms of payroll, and can handle more complexity in terms of all sorts of different employment rules, parts of your business divisions and pay groups than anyone else can. All of that existed already. And then AIR stands for AI-powered real-time payroll. And so that's what the big leap forward has been this year. And so firstly, the real-time element of it, going from the batch processing of calculating all of the inputs once per pay period, it happens in real time. And that is, Nick can build on this, but it's brilliant. Imagine you've got one screen where you've got your dashboard. It shows all of the tasks you need to do for that payroll, for that the status of that pay group. It's got anomalies you need to check. You click on that anomaly, and on your other screen, it will bring up the record of that person for you to go and check. So it's making it efficient, but also very visible, everything that's going on. So on that other screen, you go and check the problem. It looks like someone has put in the wrong amount of overtime. You fix that. And then your other screen where you've got your dashboard updates immediately. And you can see that the red flag on it has gone because it's all recalculated in real time immediately, or as soon as new timesheets come in, or as soon as new data has been entered. So it's efficient, it's engaging, it's empowering. It works incredibly well and is getting great feedback. And then the AI on top of that adds to the efficiency and the empowerment of decision making and the engagement. And there are 3 big use cases in this first wave. And then every release, we're going to be adding to that. And those 3 big use cases are the data entry. So automating that so it's not manual, of forms for new joiners, P45s, court orders, and so on. Taking that data, not just digitizing it, but also applying it to the right record and validating it as you go, with a human in the loop if you choose to, just to double check and give you confidence. Then it's applying machine learning to understand to the coding to help understand where there might be errors, so that they get flagged up. It saves you time trawling over and checking things. You spend your time verifying whether those errors are really errors or not, helping spot fraud, helping spot modern slavery, things like that. And then the third area is the one we talked about, is using generative AI to help explain people's pay slips so that they're more financially resilient, they understand what's going on, they're less stressed, and they don't use up the payroll team's time with questions like what is salary sacrifice, because they have that explained to them in really simple language. And so those are the first three, and we've been quite careful in choosing those to choose ones that are use cases that are very high value, but also that people are going to accept, because there's some nervousness around the use of AI. So, for example, at the beginning in this first version, we don't have an open prompt where you can ask questions about your salary, because customers are afraid that people might go, and by the way, what's the CEO's salary while they're doing it? Which obviously we built a prototype and it doesn't allow you to do that, by the way, but we're kind of warming people up to this technology. And one day we'll have that open chat prompt as well, so you can ask questions about it. But we're starting in an area which we think is going to gain a lot of acceptance, warm people up to it, and then offer customers who want it more advanced features in the future. But that's been our philosophy.
Does that make anything? If not, I'm keen to know. Obviously, you mentioned the three deliverables initially, but I'm really keen to see where the future's going as well. So if you've got any ideas on perhaps some of the other upgrades that people might start to experience in the future, whether it's through your platform or whether it's more general in terms of what the industry might start to expect, I'd love to get your view on what we can start to expect in the future.
Yeah, let me pick that up. So I wanted to take us back actually to a couple of years ago where we actually started designing this with our customers. So we took a prototype to our annual user summit and got flooded with feedback, which was great, and some really interesting ideas. So we've got a significant backlog of additional features that we'd like to explore, and we are exploring. We've already released our second version of that. So we've added more features on, as George said, to automating all of these forms, balancing, reconciling things like HMRC against backs and costing, etc. And the next thing we're going to be looking at is helping the payroller validate and check everything. So if you think about ideas around, well, asking the solution a question. So give me an executive summary of my payroll, for example, and AI will come and give you a summary of what's changed since last month, and here are the peaks, and here are the potential issues. So really trying to leverage that, as well as more automation throughout the cycle. So you can currently automate the end-to-end cycle, or you can automate parts of it. So we want to build more intelligence in doing that. So it'll automatically figure out when it needs to process pay, when it needs to submit pay to banks, etc. So we're going to expand on some of those items. But really the next phase is now, and we're almost there, is really helping that payroll person decipher the information that they've got.
And then I think beyond that, going to the future, it's almost having this phrase about having a co-pilot sitting next to you, someone who can assist you to be more productive and take off some of the tasks that you don't want to do. So where you can have that open prompt and you can say, tell me how many people's visa expires next month, and can you send them all an email to remind them to follow up on that and send in their renewed visa so that we've got it for record? Or can you tell me how to set up an Alabaster payment, because I've not done it for ages and I can't remember how to do it? Or my boss has asked me for a chart to show our attrition rate over the last 6 months, and it will create all of that for you and put it up. That's, I think, where you go in the next step. And that's very, very close. That technology is proven and works. I think there are still going to be a huge need for experienced payroll professionals. I don't think AI is taking away from all of that. It's going to make the job, I think, more enjoyable by taking away some of the manual work and some of the more stressful things to do. But it's going to make work more efficient and less stressful at the end of a pay period. It's going to put a premium on being able to help with the more strategic decision making and with the employee experience, and making that a strategic differentiator for an employer to be able to be to give a better experience to employees. And I think it's going to help payroll professionals do all of that. And I think that's great.
And I'm going to come to you for this one, George. If you could change one thing about the payroll industry with a single action or improvement, what would that action or improvement be?
I think more collaboration between all of the people who impact payroll. So we've got between governments, between payroll software providers, between industry associations. I think at the minute, there's a long time lag between an initial idea for a change that might simplify legislation, for example, or improve legislation. There is a very long time period between that consultation and then passing the legislation and then implementation of it. And often years are provided for payroll software providers like us to update their software. And I think we could be more dynamic as an industry and as a country if we could shorten all of that time period, both in the consultation, which we'd happily contribute more to, but also in that time period between passing changes and then having them take effect. And I think we're ready to move much more quickly to implement changes in our software so our customers can remain compliant. And assuming this legislation is for the good, we start getting the benefits of it. And I think that rather than waiting a huge time for that, if we can get those benefits earlier through moving more quickly, then I think that would make payroll industry add even more value to the broader economy. And we'll be ready for that.
Fantastic. Well, very hard to argue with that. It's a great response. So the hardest question of the day, if payroll was a song or a movie, what would it be and why?
When we had a team meeting, there's a song that I used by a hip hop artist called Lunch Money Lewis. And he's a song called Bills, which I don't remember all of the song, but it has something like, I got bills I got to pay, so I'm going to work every day, which I think kind of sums up our role very much.
Yeah, that's a pretty good response. I would have gone Bohemian Rhapsody. I just think it's a crazy, intelligent, complex song that's entertaining. There's loads going in, lots of different. That would be mine. I think that sums it up nicely. But I'll take my payroll career indeed. Bills. I think they're both equally good answers. But it's been fantastic having you both on the show today. Thank you for sharing your insights on not just the HCM AIR products, of course, but on payroll innovation, employee well-being, the future of payroll technology, of course, something I know all of my listeners are very, very interested in. And also, which I thought was really interesting, some practical applications for AI and how you're utilizing AI really smartly to improve the payroll experience, to improve accuracy, compliance, the user experience as well. Of course, for those that want to find out more about the platform, you can go to zellis.com. The link will be directly in the show notes. So if you're interested, you don't have to scrabble around, go to the show notes for this episode, and you'll have a link straight through to the product where you can find out more. Of course, if you're a payroll expert listening to this show and you need recruitment support, that's where myself and my team can get involved. There will also be a link to our website, jgarecruitment.com, in the show notes as well. And there is also, I want to bring everyone's attention to a real-time payroll blog. Again, you can find that on the Zellis website. I will put a link in the show notes. But if you want to find out more about real-time payroll, the innovations, the tech, and all the things that are happening in the world of payroll from Zellis' perspective, then have a look at that. It's a really interesting blog. I'm sure many of you who listen to this show will get an awful lot of value from. So it's easy to say a huge thank you once more to George and to Nick for joining me today on the Payroll Podcast. It's been fascinating. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I know our listeners will have too. I look forward to bringing you the next episode of the Payroll Podcast real soon. Nick and George, thank you.